Okay, folks, welcome to my third video lecture. This one's on economic indicator number 2, which is unemployment, which I think is also probably the second most important of the economic indicators after GDP. So I gave this map in class on Tuesday. This is the updated GDP map. I gave you one from 2007, so I felt bad and wanted to give you one that's a little more up to date. This is 2016. And this is GDP per capita. Notice how some countries have changed here. Russia and China still look like where they were. But if you notice, especially Southern Europe, like Spain and Italy, their GDP per capita have actually decreased. The one from 2007 was before the financial crisis, and this is 2016. So you're seeing the effects still in these countries. Greece especially. Greece used to be dark green. It was super high GDP relative to the rest of the world, and is now really, really low relative to Europe. But today we're talking about unemployment, and there is an equation to figure out the unemployment rate, and that is you divide the people looking for work by the people working plus people looking for work. So that's called the labor force. You multiply that by 100. Typically, you want a low unemployment rate. The United States right now is hovering around 5%, which is pretty good. Remember we talked about last week, there are some problems with a really low unemployment rate. You can never get unemployment at 0%. There's always people looking for work, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. So let's talk real quickly about who is not counted in unemployment, because you can't count the entire population of the United States. There are certain people who would make the number kind of irrelevant. So the first is people who are not looking for work. Good examples of this are students and stay-at-home parents. A stay-at-home mom is not counted unemployment because she is not looking for work. I, as a student, am not unemployment because I know I cannot work right now. I'm actually working for free as a student teacher, but I don't mind it. The second are retired people. So those who have already worked, are no longer looking for work, are not counted unemployment. I hope that makes sense, that we do not count people who are not looking for work in the unemployment number. Third are people who are not old enough to work. I hope that also makes sense. We're not going to count 12-year-olds in unemployment because they're not officially in the workforce. There are laws against this. So I'm not sure how they do in other countries where labor laws are a little lax, or in countries where they're more strict. I just know about the United States, we do not count those not old enough to work in the unemployment rate. Discouraged workers. So this one is one that maybe adds to the unemployment rate being misleading. People who cannot find a job and have stopped looking for one are called discouraged workers. We do not count them in unemployment. We only count those who are looking for work. So even those people might want a job, they definitely want a job, but they're just not looking for it, so they're not counted unemployment. And lastly, underemployed people. Those are those who have advanced degrees maybe and can't find jobs in their field. So the example I give here is a person with a PhD in art history who works at Starbucks. They're underemployed. This could also include people who want more hours. So if you're only working part-time and you want to work full-time, you are counted in underemployment. It adds to the number being a little misleading. So there are 3 types of unemployment. We have frictional. So for this, by the way, just know whether or not these numbers are good or not, or are totally bad. Sorry if that doesn't make sense, but frictional unemployment is just temporary. It's people who quit jobs, they're in between jobs, they're going to find new ones. They are officially counted in the unemployment rate because they're not discouraged. They are looking for work, they don't have it, but they will probably get jobs relatively soon. This is not that bad, and it happens in every economy. This is why we can't get unemployment rate to 0, because you're always going to have people in between jobs. Second type is structural. So this is the loss of a demand for a type of worker. For example, a milkman. We don't need them anymore. There are a bunch of milkmen or ex-milkmen who are structurally unemployed because there is no demand for them. This is also not bad and is naturally occurring. So this is another reason why we can never have 0% unemployment, because there are always types of work that are going out of business. This includes maybe cab drivers who are unemployed because of technology like Uber. So tech also adds to structural unemployment. Lastly, and this is the really bad one, this is cyclical unemployment, and that's because of GDP decline. It's called cyclical because there is a cycle here. The cycle being a downturn in the economy, which means people get laid off from work, and then they don't have money or a disposable income to spend on hobbies. So, sorry about that, distraction. They can't afford the things they want to buy, and so these businesses who used to sell it to people who could buy it have to lay off workers in order to cut costs. And these laid off workers go back into this cycle of not being able to afford things because they don't have a disposable income. This is cyclical and it is bad. This is the type of unemployment we want to limit as much as we can in the country. Underemployment, I talked about this a little bit. Doesn't take too much to understand. I think you got this. People who want to be more employed than what they are. And this is not counted unemployment. Here's a graph of unemployment over time. Notice how there's certain spikes in history. The biggest one during the Great Depression, it's a little bit over 20% during the height of the Great Depression. During the Great Recession, it got up to around 10%. Bad, 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 bad. You do not want 12% or 25% unemployment. I talked about this a little bit in class, there are examples of unemployment affecting politics. It makes sense. When people don't have jobs, they tend to blame people in charge. They tend to blame the government. Even if this isn't totally rational, because the government doesn't have that much to do with unemployment, they still get blamed. So here are a couple of historical instances of it. In the early 1890s, there was a spike in unemployment, and there was a power change. There was a Democratic president, Benjamin Harrison, and he was replaced by a Republican president, William McKinley. This happened again in 1920. The Democratic president, Woodrow Wilson, was in power, and there's a spike in unemployment, and then that caused a Republican president to be elected. In the 30s, high amount of unemployment in the election in 1932. Sorry again. And what happened there is we had a Republican in power replaced by a Democrat. This is a little bit of an exception. The post-World War II unemployment spike, there was a Democrat in power, and he came very close to losing an election, but his party regained control. In the 70s, Gerald Ford, a Republican, was president. High amount of unemployment. Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, got elected. Then in the middle of his term, unemployment spiked again. Jimmy Carter did not get reelected. Ronald Reagan was elected president. So we get a power change. Again in 2008, high unemployment. Republican president, a Democrat gets elected. So there's a power change. And that happens a lot, as we can see here, during times of high unemployment. So we can see here, what does unemployment have to do with politics? People don't like it when they don't have jobs, and they often blame their politicians for that. So that's exactly what I just said here. Typically during times of high unemployment rates, the governing party will lose the next election. People lose these jobs, the ruling party is typically blamed for that. It's not always true though. In 2016, we had relatively low unemployment rates, around 4.9, 4.8%, and the opposition party still managed to win. There is obviously more behind that than just unemployment. But a lot of election forecasters had said that Hillary Clinton would win the presidency because unemployment was so low. They would not blame, but they would attribute that to Democrats, and Democrats would get a bump in the polls. That did not happen. So there's a lot of factors, like I said, that go on to that. As we can see here, unemployment had actually been going down since 2010, and in 2016 it was pretty low. Yet Democrats lost power, Republicans won. So we can look at median income. This is a different economic indicator. We're not going to go into that much, but it could help explain 2016. So even though people had jobs in 2016. There was relatively low unemployment. We can see here that they were getting paid a little bit less than they were in the late 90s. That is a problem. Even though people had jobs, more people had jobs, they're still making less money. So the bottom line is still, I don't have as much disposable income as I want. So I was going to have you write an exit ticket that addresses that, but pretty much just know people, even though they had jobs, the jobs aren't that great. They're not paying as much money. Median household income is down. So Donald Trump said and made it this a key part of his campaign in 2016 that he was going to bring the jobs back and make the jobs better. And people definitely bought into that, as we can see with the results of the election. So thanks for watching. I hope this helped. Once again, if you have any questions, just leave those in the comments section, and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you.